Good morning, good evening. Hello, everybody, wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much for participating in the open house of Columbia GSAP. I'm very excited to talk to all of you after the presentation. My name is Lydia Kalipoliti, and I'm the director of the MSAAD program, the post-professional degree. And together we have Xiaoxi Chen, who's the associate director of the program. I see all of the names, but I'm going to begin with a presentation and then we can discuss any questions that you may have. So I'll start to it. Let me just hit share. Okay, so I'm starting usually these types of presentations by highlighting the history of the program, and the way that it has made an impact to me personally was when I was an undergraduate student in Greece. These are abstracts, the magazines of Columbia GSAP, when during the late 1990s and early 2000s, when Bernard Tschumi was the dean. And there was the tradition of the AED program as a kind of experimental laboratory was present ever since. At that point, there was the famous paperless studio, which was revolutionary, not only because it introduced computer-aided design practices at a time that they were really not common, but also in the ways in which architecture was conceptualized and produced. So moving forward, this framework of radical experimentation and of the understanding of the program as a laboratory for ideas has continued throughout and has had a substantial impact on the lives of many people, crafting their future trajectory as thinkers, practicing architects, and creative citizens. The AAD, and this is Avery Hall, where you would be every day with us, has helped many people that already have a professional background in architecture, and they're trained as architects. So the objective is not to learn the kind of core basic skills of being an architect, but to go deeper in how architecture may affect change in society and how each of you may develop and shape your own voice, whether you want to become professionals, academics, or scholars, or all of the above at the same time. Overall, and it's very hard to kind of say what the program is overall about, because there are so many different tracks and trajectories and opportunities to craft your own voice. But we can say that the program nurtures a renewed architectural imagination, zooming in from the micro scale of materials to the macro scale of planetary developments. It is deeply invested in how we may think of architecture as an agent of change, and by doing that, also positioning ourselves in the evolution of our fields. The history is a powerful piece of evidence to this. And as we've seen, the program has nurtured the emergence of digital practices. It has anticipated the notion of the contextual and helped introduce metropolitan culture to architecture. Today, it is deeply invested in different and interconnected global crises, from the climate crises to societal divides to geopolitical tensions, the potential of technology, but also its defiance. Basically, the cultural frameworks within which technology is developed and applied, and how it may leverage different kinds of power regimes. And we do this all from Avery Hall, which is at the heart of the main campus of Columbia University. Avery Hall, as you kind of see from this moving image, also houses the Avery Architectural and Fine Arts Library, which holds one of the richest collections, including materials and architecture, historic preservation, art history, painting, sculpting, fine arts. And it has an amazing collection of whatever you can imagine from all areas of the world and many different time periods. It is a reference library, one of the most important in the world focusing on architecture and the built environment. In the context of the program, we believe very deeply that practice, pedagogy, and research are intrinsically interconnected, and the curriculum is built around this kind of circular journey. Basically, what we teach is what we practice, and this is fueled by research and innovation. And that's what makes AAD program so unique, as we strive to address for the most pressing issues via a critical lens. And we do that through design, through writing, through research, activism, community engagement, scientific mobilization, policy, and many forms of technological development that are coordinated with critical design practices. And overall, we have a number of principles that govern our pedagogy in the program. And the first principle is that of environmental engagement, where we explore many facets of the climate change as it intersects with architecture, including environmental degradation, the erasure of natural habitats, climate migration, environmental inequality, and the contribution of the building industry to the carbon footprint and pervasive pollution. We question how the production of built space affects alternative and natural technological expressions that aim toward decarbonization and can mitigate the contaminating and extracting nature of our desires and protocols. The second principles advocates for how we may hold technologies accountable. We definitely want to mobilize technology and the potential of recent technological advancements, but we also want to hold technology accountable. We work with advanced technologies and consider them critical to the development of innovative design approaches. At the same time, we tend to interrogate the cultural and social frameworks under which these technologies operate. What are the systems of power that they cater? And what is it that makes them possible? We really want to acknowledge all the technological ecosystems of contemporary design practice. We also believe that the greater capacity of architecture is to re-articulate society. And this is very important to us. We don't think of architecture as, let's say, a neutral container within which life is placed, but architecture actually articulates how we understand the social. Moreover, society is composed both of human and more than human entities, and this alliance sustains our thinking processes throughout the program. When we look at buildings, when we design at other infrastructures, artifacts, practices, and cultures, we understand the social in conjunction with the human and more than human forms of life. And we're specifically interested in the ecological biodiversity and alternative material cultures through practices of regeneration and circular reasoning. We don't look at materials as objects that we can buy from a catalog and then we consequently place in buildings. Rather, we look at their entire life cycle. What are the material changes and the phases of different life cycles? Where do materials come from? What are the processes of extraction that are related to them? What are the communities that are affected by their production, distribution, and recycling? What is the second life of materials? And how do we intervene in those material processes and the ways in which architecture is produced that may empower different ways of thinking? Contemporary challenges also require us to consider that to challenge notions of anthropocentrism, that the human is at the center of culture, discourse, and spatial projection, and the rest of the species are sacrificial. The world that we occupy asks us to form trans-species relationships and alliances between different forms of life. For example, we want to ensure when we consider wood as a material that we form alliances and connections with the forest and the life in the forest, as well as the communities that are part in the forest. So for us, the notion of community is much more complex than it was, let's say, in the 60s and 70s, at a time when it was understood as a framework for participation and modes of governance between humans. right now we have different agencies, stakeholders, and actors in what is it that forms a community. We also understand that the realities that we're living are constituted in the assembly of online and offline urbanities. And this is something that we have naturalized. And what we mean by that is how we can understand, analyze, assess, mobilize, and infiltrate the kind of physical footprint of clouds, understand what is the role of data farms in the development of geopolitical tensions, and what is the material dimension of our online presence and our online footprint. We also pay close attention to the developments that have recently come to the forefront of public debates relative to questions of identity. And this goes from feminism, parenthood, to care of aging populations, healthy aging, and racialization. And finally, we address geopolitical tensions in the framework of designing territories and mapping conflict. We live in a moment that is incredibly prescient related to what is happening now in the Middle East, in the US border, with Mexico, in Ukraine, and Gaza. We see that, for instance, the use of gas is a fundamentally architectural problem. The ways in which gas is used and distributed shapes territories and tensions. It shapes borders, access, and space, and it becomes an architectural endeavor and responsibility through which we should deeply engage and design with. And of course, what makes the AAD program unique is that we look at all of these topics in New York City, which is the laboratory of our operations and a microcosm of all the topics and the tensions that were mentioned. This potentially gives us an embedded criticality. Criticality is incredibly important to our entire curriculum, which is loaded with discourse, activism, confrontations, different models of future projected and design work. And we do this through a very calculated and tailored curriculum, but also a curriculum that is intended for you to creatively inhabit and navigate it in a way that you may shape your own trajectory and voice. The program is composed primarily of 3 semesters, starting in the summer. And by making your own selection of courses, you can really craft your own trajectory, your own specialization. But it all starts from the summer semester, which starts at the end of May. That begins with an advanced design studio where you can select 1 out of 10 studios. The arguments and transcalarities courses, which are assembly courses for the entire cohort of about 110 people. But also these cohorts are broken into smaller groups for different classes. In the arguments during the summer, we host every week different guest critics, 1 every week, that come to present their work on the topics that we have discussed. And you have the opportunity to question these very prominent guests and learning how to ask questions that deeply engage with the projects that they're working on. You are in direct conversation with some of the most important thinkers and practitioners of architecture and urban design. And we bring people from all around the world, the most important figures in architectural discourse, designers like Forma Fantasma and thinkers like Keller Easterling. And you see on the screen the people that we brought this summer. Stan Allen, who was the first director of the AAD program and consequently the dean of Princeton University, Behnaz Farahi, a professor from MIT Media Lab, Anuradha Iyer Siddiqui, questioning practices of decolonization. Michael Young, very important architect, designer, and practicing figure, Jingru Sayan Chang and Chen Zhan, who were bringing questions of environmental inequality in Singapore to the forefront. Areti Marcopoulou, who is the director of the Advanced Architecture Institute of Catalonia in Barcelona, who presented her work on different kinds of material practices, Ursula Kripa and Stephen Muller, presenting their work on borders between US and Mexico, and Dennis Cole, who presented a history of geological studies and the tension between architecture and geology. And in arguments, in transcalarities, I'm sorry, we meet every week at Wood Auditorium, the entire class, and each week we study different case studies of architecture of the last decades to address in different ways the principles that we outlined before. The course is an opportunity to get familiar with the complexity of design and to expand your design culture and capacities by looking in detail to the most prominent cases of architectural design of the last decades. And this is one day of transcalarities where we have created a new program this summer called Enactments, where different students presented case studies through the eyes, not of the architect, but of other agents. So one of them was a critic, one of them was a plant, an air conditioner, a bacterium, and so forth. And it was a very, very interesting and engaging event. Um, in addition to the courses, we have the Makerspace and the Fabrication Center, where you can come to develop your work, but also where you can get jobs and work as teaching assistants. It is a large makerspace ecosystem on 2 different floors that is very active and vibrant. We also consistently work with experts, and that is a constant tradition in the school, experts from across the university. So for those of you that are not familiar with Columbia University, we have the climate school that also has the Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, which is one of the most important scientific centers for the evolution of the natural world, dedicated to climate and ecology. And you can visit this center and work with experts from this center. We also constantly engage in reviews, and the presence of experts and jurors is very constant and forms the basis of interdisciplinary collaboration within the context of the program. The work of students is presented at the school and is discussed by large communities of faculty experts from different research fields from the university and beyond. And these are basically snapshots from our overall studio summit review this summer, where the different studios at the end of the semester met, and all the faculty and became jurors for each other, and they interrogated how they actually are able to assign value, what is meaningful in their pedagogy, and how do we assess value between different studios. These are some of the kind of moments of the overall discussion after the studio, where we also kind of created a kind of indoor picnic and discussed all the different questions at play. So after the summer, you would have a small break in August, and you would return for the fall and the spring semester. And in that case, the AAD students are blended with for studio selection with graduating MArch students. That would make for 17 studio selections in the fall and the spring. At the same time, you have the opportunity to take history theory seminars or the AAD History of Science and Technology seminar in the fall, and the AAD seminar in the spring is focused on design and entrepreneurship. And in the spring, you have the opportunity to select out of between 15 and 20 studios, out of which one is the Design as Research Studio, where you can shape your own syllabus project and develop your work in the format of a thesis. The advanced design studios are incredibly lively. They look like this. They take place for many hours on Mondays and Thursdays, about 5 hours each time. And each of you have a position, your own space within the studios. But you're also part of a studio collective, and it is a space of community engagement, discussion, a kind of mini urbanism that is permanently active. So overall, the summer semester, which is an introduction to the AAD program, is a focused semester where you can choose a studio, but you have these kind of courses of immersion to the culture of Columbia, transcolarities and arguments. And in the fall and the spring semesters, in the fall, basically, you zoom out to the larger ecosystem of different courses throughout Columbia, and you have the opportunity to take courses from other programs as well that engage with urban design or curatorial practices as GSUP open electives. And in your final semester, you also have the opportunity to zoom in if you wish, or keep your selections. If you wish to take the research as design studio and focus your electives on that design, or if you wish to take different kinds of electives that are offered at Columbia, and there are many. I also want to say that each semester is 15 mandatory credits, but you have the opportunity to take up to 18 credits without extra cost, which is very important because a lot of students take this opportunity to take as many courses as they can while they're registered at Columbia. And we are developing a kind of new program for an additional semester, the AAD Applied Research Lab, where you can extend your studies for the fall semester and develop a thesis which is related to your particular interests with an advisor, which is something that will start in the fall of 2026. So the current students will be the first ones that will be able to enroll in that through a small application process. During the summer, even after you graduate, you get the opportunity to become teaching fellows. There's an application process for that, and 10 students are selected to become fellows. But there are also opportunities if you continue to travel in different workshops in the summer, and to do research if you continue in the fall semester. And of course, we have an incredible pool of faculty, as you see in the screen. Some of the most important and prominent voices in contemporary architecture. And I'm going to briefly show different samples of work in recent studios. So this is an example from this summer studio that we just see from the studio of Grandenza, where the students embarked on a scalar and trans-temporal journey to speculate on the possibility and implications of granting legal and political personhood to the Hudson River. And they explored their work as an allegorical scenography, as a research and design tool, investigating unresolved fluvial conflicts by gathering pieces and questioning myths, inherited determinisms, historical inertias underlying the river. And then they also operated as a speculative design laboratory. In this studio of Michael Helbig, the studio was about mining media ecologies, exploring what remains of architecture, or what it will become after the proliferation of images and our cultural and technological obsession with images, how we appropriate and extract strategies like data mining to produce counter narratives. This particular project investigated a very contentious building in New York, and it really kind of produced a narrative of what was the inspiration of that building, how it was presented in social media, what is the data retrieval process, scanning and creating a cross section through different forms of social media, and what was the kind of construction process also of that building. The studio was an invitation to critically examine contemporary changes in visual culture and image making that opens different potential interpretations. Students were invited to explore and question the vast hidden infrastructures, algorithmic biases, political agendas, economic interests, and ecological costs that sustain contemporary image production and dissemination. As architects operate within this media ecology, it is crucial not only to recognize the unseen forces that govern contemporary visual culture, but also to proactively engage with them, critically navigating and shaping new realities through speculative architectural reflections and propositions. And in other occasions, this is a different studio by Aristide Antonas that explored how slow architectural activism in a small uninhabited island, where architecture was explored as a mechanism of alliances, relationships, and rhythms capable of resisting an unwanted future of capital development. So this was a project that focused on the sounds of different species and built a project for this island by following these different sounds and creating spaces for and through them. And another important note is that we travel with our studios. Every spring, all studios travel, all 18, 20, 15, no matter what the number is, we all travel. This is a kind of series of images from my studio last spring where we traveled to Athens. This year, we are traveling to a different location, either Hong Kong or Barcelona. We will see, working on it. But it is one of the most engaging kind of educational initiatives at Columbia. It is the most endearing for students. It is wonderful to have this trip for 1 week. All studios go to different destinations, and it really brings an invaluable perspective to the development of their work and bonds the community. I also want to underscore the significance of the computation and representation sequences. This curriculum is built by the program director of computation program, Laura Kurgan at GSAP. And they have developed a kind of pedagogical arena that's called a computational glue, which is a collaborative effort of program directors to offer elective coursework across programs that involve computational tools and methods related to the practices of each program. And you see that there are clusters of different courses related to different kind of thematics like geospatial methods, interaction methods, physical computation methods, visualization techniques, and so forth. And also the computation program has developed a kind of guidebook, which is accessible online, open source. It is called a smorgasbord. And in that, it's accessible by everyone, but it becomes, it has many different kind of techniques that all studios can develop. And you can definitely access it while developing your work and kind of follow the instructions to do different things in your studio. We also have the Natural Materials Lab, which is directed by Professor Lola Ben Alon. In this lab, the technology sequence has an amazing pool of courses that I would really encourage you to look at. And they're focused on climate, environment, and their interaction with materials and technology. And these are some of the samples that are made every day in the Natural Materials Lab that are working with earth, clay, different kinds of fibers and techniques. And it They do really incredible work. At the same time, we really dedicate our efforts to generating the highest level of discourse, design, and activism and the ways in which they intersect. Here we return to the Avery Library that houses thousands of books, magazines, and rare items. And a number of our AAD graduates are accepted into Ivy League PhD programs. The culture of critical discourse is very relevant because it affects everyone in the school. So it becomes very important um, in all studios and all of our pedagogy. We also produce books at Columbia. We discuss books every week. We have a program called the Open Library. It takes place on most Fridays, and we bring many different guests that are presenting their books. It's also important to say that we have a number of positions as teaching positions in the program. So you're able to apply to become a teaching assistant and work as a teaching fellow once you graduate from the program in the summer, the fall, and the spring. There's a minimum of 10 associate teaching positions for the summer that are offered through an open call, but there are also other positions to work in the school throughout the year and get teaching experience. We also have program initiatives that are very important. This is from last year. We initiated a program called the Edible Summits, where through an open call again, we invite teams of students to produce an installation that becomes a public venue where a dining table is reinvented as an architectural project. And here you see some of this program. There's an open call. The student teams are between 3 and 5 people. They submit a proposal, and if they're selected, they're funded through the program to develop their work in this open installation. So the 2 teams that got selected last year, one of them was called Locality, and they worked with scavenging materials from a selected radius within the campus, edible materials, and developing ways through which to display where do these come from, how they can be enacted. The second group was working with questions of composting and of understanding the notion of a kind of garden and of composting and decomposting the materials that we engage with. So they worked with different worms to decompose kind of edible substances. And we do a kind of nice public event where students are collected, and then we kind of eat the installations or around the installations. Um, we also have different student organizations, and it's possible that it's very important to us that students are not just students, but they're also university citizens. And we offer the possibility to form student organizations and trigger initiatives with the funds of the school. So radio was a kind of past initiative where the students kind of created podcasts and a database of podcasts. That was very important throughout the pandemic because we had this kind of online dissemination of content. Currently, we have 2 groups working, two new student associations that were just started in the summer. We have the GSUP Civic Collective that engages with different kinds of communities and forms partnerships with nonprofit organizations and community groups and offers pro bono design services. And we have B-Side, which is a student-run publication at Columbia that expands architecture from its margins. Finally, we're located in New York, which is our home and our ecosystem. We have the most multicultural neighborhoods in the world and the presence of the most important architectural offices, NGOs, intergovernmental alliances, associations, and agencies from the United Nations to whatever you can imagine. Um, the program is also as a logistical designation. I want to underscore that for those that do not have US citizenship, it is STEM designated, which is very important because it gives the opportunity for students to work for 3 years in the US past your graduation. And when you come and enroll here, we will be with you, working with you every day. And we will do this with huge enthusiasm because we believe very deeply in this program, our cohort, and our pedagogy. And we look forward to welcoming your applications. So thank you so much. And we will be happy to discuss any questions that you may have.